Hello, my name is Tom McPherson, and in this video I'll show you one way of drawing a dragon. Let's start by drawing the basic shape of a head of a dragon and a long neck. The head at this stage just needs to be an oval with a snout. It doesn't need to have any detail, it doesn't need to really be right, it just needs to be something which isn't a blank piece of paper, just something to get going with. So once we've done a basic shape of a head, we put a simple neck on. And now we can draw the foreleg of the dragon. I think dragons' knees sort of go backwards like a horse, and the top of the foreleg needs to be quite strong and powerful, quite wide. We could draw the other foreleg behind the first one, and it would need to be a little bit, stop a little bit short, so it looks a little bit further away than the first foreleg of the dragon. Next, we can draw the body and indicate from there where the tail will go. For that, it's quite useful just to try and think about how it fits within the paper that you're using, so you sort of fit the tail to make the design work for your drawing. Next, we could draw the two hind legs of the dragon, and we should really probably make them similar to the forelegs, but maybe a bit stronger and more powerful looking. Once we've done this, the next stage I think is to draw up from the foreleg. We could draw the elbow sort of shape of the dragon and sketch in the tail a little bit more. So now we have the basic shape of a dragon, it's time to add an indication for where the horns on the head of the dragon go, and add a bit more shape to the wings as well. For this dragon I'm just going to draw wings a bit like bat's wings, so the wing at the front and then the wing at the back as well. The back wing like a bat's wing at the back. And then an eye, just a simple eye. And then we need to work out really how the mouth of the dragon will go, so that it doesn't look too smiley, which I think is always quite difficult. But if we add quite a few spikes to the skull, to the head area, and some sort of web-like features or points, that will help it to look like a dragon as much as possible. And after this, I'll just indicate a bit more how the horns of the head go. And then really, I think I need some more spiky bits on the front of the dragon's head. And that will be useful for later on. Because later on in this drawing, I think I'll use some pen work. And I'm using grey paper, which means I've got an option for putting some soft white pastel on later on to make a full tonal range. But you could use white paper, there's no real difference at this stage. So along here on the neck, I think it would be good to put some more scales, or maybe under armour. So we're sort of drawing scales, but also making it look a bit like medieval armour as well. At least that's what I've got in my head as I'm doing this. So thinking of sort of lizards and snakes, but also knights in armour and metallic sort of shapes, or mechanical sort of shapes to some extent as well. So along here on the wing and the elbow, which sort of holds onto the wing, with a little point there on the elbow corner. And then this needs to look very muscular, so you could do some tight sort of lines to make it look strong. And then just working down here, the line sort of goes in a way into the foreleg from the elbow shape. It's all one sort of muscular shape, and that's very useful to have. And then at the bottom of the feet of the dragon, I'll put 3 claws I think at the front and one sort of clawal spike at the back, and try to make them pretty sturdy so the dragon looks quite strong. And now I've got one leg, I'll just repeat that for the leg at the back, repeating some of the shapes that I put into the foreleg, so that there's some consistency within the drawing. So obviously a dragon I'm just inventing the shapes. But once I've got a few shapes, I like to repeat them in other areas of the dragon. So working on the wing, just making the curves seem more gracious and smoother. And just working out this back wing, and maybe put a little spike on there because it's further away, so it'll be slightly smaller. And then working through on the top of the back and working all the way along so that the tail's quite spiky. Now I think I'll try and get a curve in this tail with a tail spear at the end of the tail, and then just work on these hind legs and put in the 3 claws like I have on the 4 legs, and then some sort of more scales or armour plating going in sort of a semicircle, and then the backs of the legs like a horse, where the knees of the legs go backwards, but still trying to make it look like it can hold its own weight, so that the legs can hold the weight of the dragon and it looks like it could to some extent move. Dragon I'm drawing seems to be quite mechanical, but I quite like mechanical looking dragons, so you can make yours look more organic in shape, I guess. It's totally up to you. I think dragons will probably always come out a bit differently every time you draw one. So here I'm just inventing some scales along it, and then I'm going to work out sort of twist in the tail, so as it goes around, these points will sort of curve over to the top by the time they get to the bottom of the tail. And then I'll put some lines within the wings, and then I'm going to need to work on the eye quite a lot, but I'll probably just figure that out once I use some pen work. Because this drawing is going to be a pen drawing in the end, all this pencil mark is just really to indicate, and then when I start using a pen on top, then that's really where I'm going to decide exactly where the lines go. But I'll speed up the drawing a little bit now, because it's just a matter of putting some of the armour plating scales on and making it look quite dense and complex shape, because I think dragons are quite a simple shape, but then they've got lots of complex textural shapes on them. Putting some spiky teeth in to the mouth, making sure it doesn't look too smiley, and some smaller scales around the eye, and then trying to get some points and sort of jagged shapes wherever I can. And then here in the sort of under armour of the dragon, I'll just continue these shapes so that it looks like it's not sort of trapped within the armour, that it's within the scales that it has. It looks like they could sort of move, so if it moved the leg, the scales would move with it. Now I think because it's going to be penwork later on, that some of this will get quite dark towards the end, so I can just sort of play around and invent some of the shapes, and all the shapes from now on are getting smaller and smaller, so you can just try like these sort of semicircles that I'm putting up on the legs, just try and see if they look right. And maybe along here I'll add some more spikes, because I don't want that curve in the tail to not be spiky, so I'll keep adding more spikes, and they sort of get smaller, so the spikes are going to smaller and smaller shapes. So I just use an eraser to rub out any lines I don't need, and now slowing down the video for a second and just drawing in the eye. So often with animals it's quite tempting to make it look human, because that's what we're used to looking at, but a dragon's eye is quite specific. They can look lots of different shapes, but just make sure you don't make a too human looking eye. And then just speeding up the video again, going over all the lines with a thin black pen, and again not really copying the lines exactly, but if I can think of a way of improving them or making them more spiky or more clarified, then I'll do that at this stage, so that the pencil lines that we drew, that we spend time drawing, are really just guidelines, and if there's anything that will help the drawing be a simpler, clearer design, I'll use that with the black pen. So I just spend a little bit of time going through it all, and then after this stage, because I think I already mentioned that the paper that I'm using is slightly grey paper, which means that the penwork, once we get into it, will be nice and black, but I'll have an option of using a little bit of white pastel later on to make a few highlights. But I don't want this a totally linear drawing, so I'm going to add now some tonal areas of just black pen, and then after I've put in some smaller scales, which will also make areas look dark, and follow this through a little bit more, if I keep continuing this, it will make it look a much more solid design, but probably just black and white won't be enough, so I'll probably need to do some hatching or cross hatching, which is where you put lines all parallel to each other and close together to make a sort of mid-tone. But before I do the mid-tone, I think I've got quite a lot of this dark black tone to do, and I'll sort of have it so that the light's coming towards the dragon from the left going right. So I'll generally put shadows or drop shadows on the right of the shapes that I've drawn, and again speeding it along because it's just repeating the same thing again and again. It's fun to do, but it takes a little bit of time. I think this dragon took about an hour and a half to draw in total, but I sort of thought it through a little bit first. The actual first part of the drawing was in real time in this video, and that was quite quick. But these sort of things that I'm doing now, they took a long time just playing around with the shapes and figuring out what works. And because it's a pen, you can't really make a mistake. But if you do make a mistake, I just add to that mistake to change it. So these scales in here, I'm putting the scales in because I thought they'd look okay. But then after a while I think, well, maybe they're losing some of the shapes that I had in that area. So I put a few more lines in. But probably the best way to fix that would be just to make that area a bit darker. So I could block it in really dark, or I could do, like I was suggesting before, a sort of mid-tone. So I just erased some of the pencil lines, and here I put in some of hatching, where you just got diagonal lines all going closely in one direction. And then if we cross those with diagonal lines going a different way, then we get cross hatching. But also I need to block in some darker areas as well, because I quite like a drawing where it's quite dramatic and quite solid. So just looking around the drawing now and trying to not scribble over, but just neatly block in some hatching or cross hatching or darker areas. And I'll do that in the wing as well, so that I can define what's light and what's dark, leaving a few areas to use with a soft white pastel later on. So cross hatching on the wing, making it darker and stronger at all stages. And then maybe the underbelly of the dragon here, I'll make that really dark, and maybe use a different pen just to make it even thicker and darker. And then this is about towards the end of the drawing, I think. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Circle Line Art School, for many more of my drawings. I have over 195 drawings now, all of different types. So this is the drawing sort of finished at this stage, and I'll just add a little bit of this soft white pastel after I put a small shadow just below the feet and maybe a little bit just by the tail. So the shadow is really low down because it would interfere with the sort of silhouette of the drawing. I want the drawing to have a clear sort of strong silhouette of a shape, which is sort of pleasing to me, the way that all the shapes of the dragon fit within the page that I'm using. So here's the little soft white pastel, just got a little stump of it left, and I just press that in, and it seems very bright because of the paper being grey and not white. It means that when you put white on it, it'll just give you that extra tone. If that's something that you're interested in, it's quite a useful device in art to do that sometimes, if you want something looking quite solid. So you have to be quite careful. I don't want to do too much of the pastel. If you didn't have pastel, you could use pens. That would be great fun, doing different colours with pens. And you could use a background, put a castle or a forest or something in the background would be good. But for this, I'll just leave it as a simple dragon. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Circle Line Art School, where I have over 195 different how to draw videos. I hope you found this useful for your drawing. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Here's a list of the materials I used: 4B pencils, some grey paper, black pens and soft white pastel. And here are some examples of some other related, perhaps, some videos that I've done. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye.